Right, tomorrow the world observes International Human Rights Day, a moment that reminds us that human rights are not lofty concepts but everyday essentials. Now, this year's theme, Human Rights Are Everyday Essentials, highlights how safety, dignity, equal access to services, a freedom of expression and fair treatment before the law from the basic foundations of daily life. To speak more on this, let's now welcome Abigail Noko, the regional representative for Southern Africa Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, rather. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your time this afternoon. Let's talk about this topic. I mean, a lot of people would be, of course, looking at just the various conflicts that we are observing across the globe and wondering where humanity is. I mean, when you look at the fact that 76 years later, there are so many questions about where the most urgent human rights challenges facing the world currently are. Speak to us about what you are seeing and how, more importantly, we should be marking tomorrow.
Well, thank you so much, Unati, and it's good to be with you today. I think the first thing really is to recall the reason why we're celebrating International Human Rights Day. And of course, it is a day that is marked by the adoption of the Universal Declaration for Human Rights. And that Universal Declaration for Human Rights marks a really extremely important moment. A moment when the world came together after the scourge of two world wars, economic distress, fights for colonialism, and apartheid as we know it in this country. Really came together and decided that we needed a common charter that speaks to the human dignity of all human beings, no matter where you live in the world. And so in a way, we've been celebrating this International Day for decades now. But we mark this moment this year with the theme of human rights, our everyday essentials, because in a way, we're going back to basics. It's the idea that human rights, as you mentioned, are not abstract or lofty ideas. They really define our everyday lives. From the minute you wake up to the minute you sleep, to the things that you do on your daily basis, those are different forms of expression of human rights. And it's important that we don't think of human rights as being something out of reach, but really as something that is within our reach. Now, as you've highlighted, it is true that there are conflicts, there are many situations of distress that we're seeing around the world. And that is also the reason why the theme for this year is Human Rights Are Everyday Essentials, because it's a recognition of the contrast in which we are living in, but at the same time to recognize that these fault lines are not a question of the problem of human rights. It is a fault line in terms of the implementation of human rights.
Yeah. When we talk about that theme that you mentioned, our everyday essentials, how does this theme, just shift the global conversation from these high-level commitments to lived realities on the ground, given the sense that we still see so many human rights violations?
Well, the idea is really to recognize that human rights really shape our daily routines, and sometimes in ways that are really unnoticed. So if you imagine a child going to school, the mere fact that a child is able to enjoy their right to education is a human right. The mere fact that a person with disability should be able to enjoy reasonable accommodation is a human rights issue. When you are sick, the fact that you're able to go to a hospital and seek medical treatment is a human rights is a human right. Right now, we are in the week of 16 days of activism and gender-based violence. The whole principle about accountability where gender-based violence occurred is a human rights issue, just in as much it is a human rights issue when conflicts do occur. When we are faced with situations of economic distress, as we see the cost of living crisis right now, these are all everyday human rights issues that are essential. And it's important to recognize that whilst we are seeing, a lot of a difficulty the world over, these human rights still remain, at the very heart of our everyday lives.
And in terms of, access, equal access to services like healthcare, education, even justice, they remain deeply uneven. I mean, we hear all the time how unequal most of these societies are. How is your office supporting member states to close these gaps, especially when you look at developing countries and regions?
Well, we're doing a lot of work in this area because, of course, we are providing assistance to member states to address some of those challenges. In the region that we cover here in Southern Africa, we are constantly engaging with member states to ensure that they fulfill their international human rights obligations. And that starts by ratifying a number of treaties. And we have, as a result of this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we have over 80 treaties, international treaties that deal with human rights issues. So we provide assistance to states to ensure that they are, start off by adopting national laws and policies that recognize these human rights issues, but also where, countries are found to be lacking, we call for accountability. There are a number of mechanisms that we have within the UN system that is really intended to encourage member states to fulfill those human rights obligations and provide a set of recommendations. So we follow up, we engage with member states, we advocate, and we provide the technical assistance where we are able to.
And in South Africa, I mean, how does your office particularly view the state of human rights in South Africa today, particularly given the fact that we are one of those unequal societies? This has been said even during, the most important global events taking place in this country, where we've seen so many organizations come out to protest in terms of the human rights violations.
Well, the challenges are well known. In South Africa, it's often spoken about the fact that the challenges of inequality, poverty, and unemployment. But I think it's also important to emphasize that the South African Human Rights Commission also recently issued its report on the state of human rights, where it spoke about these socioeconomic challenges being a main driver of some of the human rights challenges that we find in South Africa. But having said that, I think South Africa regularly puts itself forward before a number of human rights mechanisms. Some of the ones that it was recently before, for example, dealt with children's rights, but it was also reviewed by a number of human rights committees. And there are a number of recommendations that have been put forward. So the challenges are well known. Inequality is a big driver of many of the human rights challenges that we know in South Africa. And we work very closely with civil society, with government, and as well as the South African Human Rights Commission and human rights defenders to seek to address some of those challenges.
All right, Abigail, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Abigail Noko, the regional representative for Southern Africa, Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Tomorrow, the world is observing International Human Rights Day.